Okay, now we want to look at another way we could have solved this equation. The way we've solved it, either using common sense or use substitution, is the simplest way to solve the equation. What we've already seen is the simplest solution. But let's look at what happens if you miss the idea that the square of this thing is 1, so this thing has to be 1 or negative 1. If you chose to expand this, you would get x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 1. And I assume that you can write x plus 2 times x plus 2, multiply that out using the distributive law, and verify that you get this. Now the question is how to solve this equation. Well, first of all, what kind of equation do we have? Well, this equation is a quadratic equation, and you should by now know how to identify a quadratic equation. To solve a quadratic equation, we want to put it into the form of a quadratic, which in this case, well, why don't you put it into the form of a quadratic? What is the form of a quadratic equation? The standard form? It's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We've got an ax squared plus bx plus c equals 1. How do we get it into that form? Subtract the 1 from both sides, and we get x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. Now what can we do with that? Well, there are two ways to solve this. We can factor it, and it factors pretty easily. You should go ahead and factor this without looking at what I did. But what we end up with is x plus 3 times x plus 1 equals 0. We have only one choice for the numbers that we're going to put here, and only one choice for the x. We've got to have two x's here to give us x squared, and we're going to have 3 and 1 to give us 3. Now, if 3 times x plus x times 1 doesn't give us 4x, we're out of luck. We haven't been able to factor it, but in this case, that works. Now, the solutions to this equation. What are the solutions to this equation? Think about it, pause the video, come back when you've got that straight and see if you're right. Okay, well, x equals negative 3 is one solution, and for a very simple reason, if we plug in negative 3, this first term becomes negative 3 plus 3, which is 0. Multiplied by whatever the second term is, we can easily figure it out. It's negative 2, but it doesn't matter because it's being multiplied by 0, and it will give us 0. That verifies that x equals negative 3 is a solution. Plug in x equals negative 1. That'll make this one 0, make the whole thing 0. So x equals negative 1 is a solution. And of course, that agrees completely with the solutions that we got here and here. One other possibility is the quadratic formula. That gives us what? X equals, now we apply the quadratic formula. It has to be, the quadratic has to be in this form to apply the quadratic formula. It has to be in this form to use factoring. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. You know that formula. If you don't know that formula, fix that. We know that a is 1, b is 4, c is 3. So the quadratic formula is going to give us negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4a, which is 4 times 1, times c, which is 3. All that divided by 2a, which is 2 times 1. Okay? And that's going to be 16 minus 12, which is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So we're going to have negative 4 plus or minus 2 over 2. Well, minus 4 plus 2 is negative 1. Divided by 2 gives us negative 1. And minus 4 minus 2 is negative 6. Divide that by 2, you get negative 3. You should verify that. And you certainly know how to work out the quadratic formula. And that's kind of a last resort. From this, you see that this common sense method is very efficient. The U substitution method, well, you got to write out a few more lines, but it's equally simple. If we happen to expand the thing, not seeing that there's an easier way to solve it, we can still do it by putting the equation into quadratic form and factoring, or using the quadratic formula.